In this video, we'll talk about subject-verb agreement, which is a very important topic in grammar. When we say subject-verb agreement, we're talking about the subject matching with the verb in number mainly, and that means if you have a singular subject for your sentence, then when we get to the verb of the sentence, that verb needs to be singular as well. And if the subject is plural, then the verb needs to be plural. And this sounds very obvious to you, but there are a lot of little technicalities that make this an important and very difficult issue. The first thing you need to do is to know the number of the subject. You have to be able to determine whether your subject is singular or plural in the first place. Do we have an apple or apples? It's as easy as that, but there are some tricky situations. Let's look at some examples. The company were ready to file its taxes. Well, the company is definitely a singular word, so this would be considered wrong, right? So company was, we should say. Everyone are here. Now, this might be a little confusing because everyone sounds like, well, everybody in the room. That could be 30 people. That sounds like it might be plural, but it is not. Everyone, the word everyone in grammar is considered singular, so you would have to say everyone is here. Some of his hair is blue. Well, now we gotta think, where's my subject first of all? The subject here is not the hair, the subject is some. A pronoun, subject here, and the of his hair is called a prepositional phrase, and we ignore that part when we're talking about subject and verb situation. So all we're thinking about is some is. And the problem with some is that sometimes it's singular and sometimes it's plural. And so the verb is depends on whether that some is singular or plural in this particular sentence. And for that purpose, we need to consider what we're talking about. And we're talking about hair. And unless you're talking about different strands of hair, we're talking about the whole lump of hair on that person's head, and that is a singular, non-countable word. So we would consider this a singular word. Then the verb is also singular. So we would say, hey, some of his hair is blue. Now, here's an exception. If you pulled out, say, 5 strands of hair from this guy, and you laid it out on the table, and you're looking at these 5 strands, and 3 of them were blue, then in that case, you're actually counting things, and you have multiple things, which are 5 in this case, and 3 out of 5 are definitely plural. So in that case, you would say, some of his hair are blue. Another rule to consider is about appositives. If you don't remember what appositives are, please go back to the video with the topic appositives to review. Now, when you're in a standardized test situation like SAT or GMAT or TOEFL, whatever, and they're testing you on your grammar skills, because subject and verb agreement is a very big topic, you will get this kind of situation very often. The test maker is intentionally trying to make a very complicated sentence or a confusing sentence for you. So the actual sentence might be a very simple one. The test writer begins with a simple sentence like, the insects is crawling across the kitchen table. But what they want to do is make it more confusing by inserting words here and there just to confuse you. So one tactic is to add an appositive, and they can make it very long. In this case, I intentionally made a very long appositive just to show you as an example. Let's try reading the sentence. The insects, large hairy-legged ants that have spied my bowl of oatmeal cereal left unattended next to the glass of milk, is crawling across the kitchen table. Now, this is grammatically correct. There's nothing wrong with this sentence. Although those words in the appositive there, you could make it even longer if you wanted to, as long as it's structurally sound, it's possible. The problem is that this kind of sentence is a little confusing for the writers usually who are writing sentences like this, because when they start with insects plural, and then they write on and on, and then by the time they get to the verb, they forget what the subject was, whether it was exactly singular or plural, so they might write is here. Now, when you're a test taker, you have to be able to basically ignore this part. Recognize what the appositive is, ignore that part, and read just the main sentence. The insects is crawling, you would read, and you would know right away that this is incorrect. So you would have to change the is to an are. More often, it's not the appositive that causes the confusion, but it's the prepositional phrases, such as what you see here. And you need to do the same thing. You need to ignore the prepositional phrases. The sentence reads, one of many personal rights protected by the Bill of Rights are listed in the First Amendment. So here you need to identify your prepositional phrases, which is of many personal rights. Okay, I guess you could stop there. Okay, protected by is another prepositional phrase. Okay, by what? By the Bill of Rights. Okay, and the word protected is not a prepositional phrase, but what it is it describes the rights. What kind of rights are they? Okay, so it's a participle that goes along with the rights. And in fact, this whole thing in green, this is all descriptive of what this one is. And so we need to ignore that part altogether and recognize that the subject of the sentence is one. Then when you get to the verb, you get are, and that would be wrong. You have to say one is listed. Okay, so recognize your prepositional phrases. They happen a lot. Another thing to watch out for is the clauses. A clause is like a phrase, but there's a subject and verb embedded in it, which makes it look like a sentence. So here we have the teachers who have been protesting the new school policy against punitive homework assignments for a disruptive class is holding a walkout this week. Okay, so here also I intentionally made this very long, but we do have just a clause here explaining who these teachers are. Well, they're the teachers that have been protesting the school policy, blah, 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 blah. But all of it is about the teachers. You can ignore this clause for the purpose of looking for the subject-verb agreement, and then recognize that your subject is teachers and your verb here is holding, which is incorrect. You would have to say the teachers are holding. Then there are a couple of small rules to know about the conjunctions. Whenever two things are connected by and, the verb needs to be plural. So if you had an apple and a banana, the minimum number you can have is one apple and one banana, and that's still two, and the two are would be the proper thing to say. Now, it's a little different if you have an or. If you have an or, the rule is look at the subject closer to the verb, okay? Not the first subject or the second subject. It's actually the one closer to the verb, because the verb could actually be in front of the subject, as in question sentences. Okay, so let's look here. An apple or some bananas is what we have. Subject is an apple, that must be one there. Some bananas is the other choice. Let's say 5. Okay, this one has to be plural. The verb depends on the one that is closer to the subject, closer to the verb. So this verb are depends on the bananas, and that's why we have to choose are there. In the second sentence, we have some bananas or an apple. Here's my singular. Here's the one. Here's the 5 in the front. The one closer to the verb is the one apple, and so we have to choose the verb is in this case.